Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Holy Comfort Bible Study. We are on chapter 21 of the book of Revelation. We've only got 2 sessions left. So if you haven't been following, now's the time to jump in. I didn't want to... N.T. Wright's got a really good opening. I'll read it, and then we can jump in with this opening question. There are some moments in life when we say to ourselves, everything is going to be different now. This is entirely new. This is a whole new world opening up. We might think of some major life events, birth, marriage, full recovery from a long and dangerous illness, the experience of someone new coming to live with you. John has, on a cosmic scale, such moments in mind as he builds up this breathtaking picture of the new heaven and new earth. I will be his God, and he shall be my son. A final new birth. The holy city is like a bride dressed up for her husband, a wedding. There will be no more death or mourning or weeping or pain anymore, the great recovery. And central to this whole picture, and indeed explaining what it all means, is the great promise. God has come to dwell with humans, the new permanent guest. As with all symbolism, these are signposts pointing into the unknown future. And at every point, John is saying, it's like this, but much, much more so. When has there been a moment in your life when you have said to yourself, everything is going to be different now? Everybody?
I can think of a few. I thought that once I got my master's degree, that all of a sudden I would get a level of respect, and that I wouldn't have to work as hard to prove myself to other people. That was not to be.
Yeah.
And the other way, when my mother died, I thought, that there would be nobody left to nurture me or guide me unconditionally. That turned out not to be true either, of course.
Anybody else? You said everything's going to be different now.
Birth of a baby does that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's like, whoa. I remember sitting in the last class at seminary, and I realized that I had been in school for 20 straight years, and I said to myself, whoa, like this is the last time I'll be in a classroom. Like this is, now what do I do? But in a very sort of, this is weird. Everything's going to be different. It's strange. Okay, well then let's kick off. 21, 1 through 5. I'll read it for the sake of you folks out there on the interwebs. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, see, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away. And the one who was seated on the throne said, see, I am making all things new. Also he said, write this, for these words are trustworthy and true. So we'll stop there. I think jump out.
What happened to the old things?
Okay, so remember, look back to chapter 20, verse 11. Then I saw a great white throne, and the one who sat on it. The earth and the heaven fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. So it's almost like if God's saying like, okay, we're gonna recreate everything. The old has fled away. This is one of the readings for burials in the Episcopal Church, which I think is really beautiful. Death will be no more. Behold, I make all things new. Yeah, Anybody have the King James version? Do you have it? Do you have the King James version?
I can.
It's Revised Standard.
Do you have "Behold, I make all things new"
Yes.
or "See"?
Behold.
Behold is such a cooler word. I think it has a connotation that it's not just something that you see with your eyes. It's something that you take in all the way. I think that's awesome. Behold, I make all things new.
Who are the people that sing this song? Like, can you remember the name of the song?
Which one?
Out of these verses.
Well, I can think of several that come from verse 4. Old.
No, we sang
songs.
it in Minstrel. Well, Rejoice. Oh,
That's right. It's all good.
I was hoping I had it on here, but I don't.
It's all good.
It's that gospel quartet or quintet.
Anything else? Y'all hear anything? Okay, so one of the things that strikes me is that the sea is no more. Remember we talked about how the sea is this sort of place of chaos. It's where the monsters live. We even know this in our own lives, like hurricanes, tsunamis. The sea is sort of a scary place. If you think in the beginning of Genesis, God's Spirit dwells over the waters, and that's representative of chaos. And God sort of pushes the waters back so that land can come out of it. So sea, in the sort of ancient scriptural view, was the residence of chaos and monsters. And God has always been moving that back, and this is sort of the completion of that. What are you going to say, Jerry? What are you going to say? Okay.
There will be no water?
I would imagine that there's water, because we'll see that we'll come to the river of life here soon. But the sea the sea is different for whatever reason. So we get to the river of life in chapter 22. So I don't know.
Wouldn't it be a boring place?
I don't know.
No cheers, no excitement, no, everything is nice and pleasant all the time.
We were talking about this last week, right? That if everything's gold, well, then it's sort of like, well, it loses its importance. I think the key here is that what God is promising is not just this earth sort of refurbished, but it's all new things. It's like a whole new way of existence. So I think our sort of concepts of what heaven is like just pale in comparison to what God promises to do. And this passage has also been one of the passages to sort of push back against the idea of rapture. The idea of rapture is, when God's going to destroy the world or whatever, all the sort of Christians will be sucked up into heaven. This has been one of those sort of passages that says, if we read this carefully, it's actually that it seems to be that it's coming down out of heaven. Sort of, so not us go there, but it comes to us.
Oh.
What?
If I just read the next line, it is the Alpha and Omega by the Gabriel
Yeah.
Band.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah.
If we're already with the Lord in heaven, and then this is coming out of heaven, means we're going someplace.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think I talked about this. The ancient Roman parade practices. Do y'all remember this?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Um,
Gathering outside the city.
Yeah. Were you here for this one, Jerry?
I don't
Okay. If y'all don't mind,
remember it.
so here's a city. There's the city wall. So when a king would be coming to
Oh,
the
yes, I know what you're talking about now.
okay,
The community comes out to
Yeah.
meet him and becomes part of the parade back.
right, exactly. So for the sake of you folks online, in ancient parades, when the king was coming into town, it was actually the whole town would come out to meet him and then parade back in. And so I think that's kind of the sense that we get here, is that sort of being with the Lord, but then in a sort of triumphal return, sort of reprocession, as God sort of recreates everything. And N.T. Rice got a good question. It's short. It's what is included in all things. And I think it's sort of stretching our imagination. I think a lot of times when we think about sort of heaven or what is all that like, we think of like, mom and dad and like our kids and like our dogs, but it's sort of like, hold on, that it's bigger than that, right? What do y'all think about, I don't know, aliens, galaxies, things of that nature? Would aliens be part of this?
All things is
Yeah,
all
why not?
things.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, are there aliens?
Yeah, who knows? But mosquitoes, dinosaurs, whatever. I think that's really because if we truly say that God is creator of everything, not just us, but of everything, then I think everything's involved.
There's no more crying and no more pain, which means the mosquitoes won't be biting.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Okay, let's do, I'll read verses 6 through 8. These are some kind of funky ones. Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water as a gift from the spring of the water of life. Those who conquer will inherit these things, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the polluted, the murderers, the fornicators, the sorcerers, the idolaters, and all liars, their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." So, in the chapter before, remember we have the first resurrection and then the second resurrection. So here we have the first death and then the second death. So they're somehow, I think, supposed to be corollaries. Okay, so this list in verse 8.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's us.
Yeah, I was going to say, darn it, I'm on that list.
Right, exactly. I think we all find ourselves in there at some point. So what do you think Revelation is sort of asking us? Remember, put it back into its context. First century, sort of oppression by the Romans. I think what
Are you going to join the Roman way of life? Or
Yeah.
Are you going to stay
right.
separate?
Yeah. It's remember, there's been the question throughout all of Revelation is, are you really with us, or are you just kind of with us? If they really come to throw you to the lions, would you go to the lions or would you cop out? Do you remember earlier, way back in like chapter 2, there's that one letter where Jesus says, "You are neither hot nor cold, you're lukewarm, so I'm going to spit you out of my mouth." I think that's really what's going on here, is that they're asking sort of, are you here, and are you part of it or not? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. In Episcopalians, I think on the whole, we get sort of finicky when we start talking about hell. Like we're sort of. So many of our other brothers and sisters are much more sort of comfortable, I think, talking about the fires of hell and brimstone and all that. I think Episcopalians sort of get a little weird about it. All right, I guess we'll go on. We can come back to it, but I'll keep reading. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls, full of the 7 last plagues, came and said to me, "Come, and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." And in the Spirit he carried me away to a great high mountain and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It has the glory of God and a radiance like a very rare jewel, like jasper, clear as crystal. It has a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates are inscribed the names of the 12 tribes of the Israelites. On the east 3 gates, on the north 3 gates, on the south 3 gates, and on the west 3 gates. And the wall of the city has 12 foundations, and on them are the 12 names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who talked to me had a measuring rod of gold to measure the city and its gates and walls. The city lies 4 square, its length the same as its width, and he measured the city with his rod, 1,500 miles. Its length and width and height are equal. He also measured its wall, 144 cubits by human measurement, which the angel was using. The wall is built of jasper, while the city is pure gold, clear as glass. The foundations of the wall of the city are adorned with every jewel. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the 7th chrysolite, the 8th beryl, the 9th topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst, and the 12 gates are 12 pearls. Each of the gates is a single pearl, and the street of the city is pure gold, transparent as glass. Let's stop there. You snicker, what?
Because it appears to be self-contradictory.
How so?
Gold is clear as
Mhm.
glass.
A gate that is an entire pearl.
Right.
So this was the joke earlier that the sea is no more because there was like the most giantest oyster in the world to make that pearl.
So is this where the saying the pearly gates comes from?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. But of course, St. Peter's not here. I don't know where St. Peter ever sort of gets into that joke, but he doesn't really show up here.
There are so many jokes.
There are.
Why is it so important to put dimensions on all of it?
It's like all the stuff in is it Exodus or
Yeah. Like in Exodus and the sort of the description of what the temple and the tent of presence needs to be like. Yeah. So I don't know why. It's also reminiscent, if you remember, of Ezekiel 40. This is when the angel goes and measures the temple. So it's sort of thrown back to that as well. Now, of course, so it's a giant cube. Here we have the cube. I was telling them earlier, I'm so bad. I actually had to ask somebody earlier to draw the cube for me. I wasn't able to do it. But so the idea was, this is the ancient temple. like the ancient Jewish temple. So outside of it was the court of the Gentiles. But then if you went into the temple, there was the nave. That's where the sort of those who had been cleansed could go. And then towards the back, there was the Holy of Holies. And it was a perfect cube. And this was where it was believed God's presence dwelled, was right there in the Holy of Holies. This is where the high priest, I think I preached about this, where he could go in once a year, but they tied a rope around him, so if he saw God die, they would go drag him out. So you got to be thinking, okay, these people reading it, they would have remembered that God's presence dwelt in this sort of cubic shape, this sort of, in their eyes, like a perfect form, the same all the way around. So when you read about the sort of cube coming down out of heaven, it's supposed to be signifying like, okay, this is God's presence. This is all of sort of God's being coming down and dwelling with us. So it's not anymore just one person going into the Holy of Holies. It's God coming down to us and sort of embracing all of us, the fullness of God's presence. And so I think it's not so much the quantity then of life in the New Jerusalem, sort of 1,500 miles cubed. It's the quality that life is perfect and that life is with God completely, represented by the perfection of the cube. So what do y'all think? I mean, it's wild, right? I mean, this is a crazy vision.
What can you think?
Yeah, I mean, and so again, I think this is just such deeply symbolic language. And remember, put yourself in the place of a Christian of the first century being persecuted by the Roman Empire. It's a really wonderful thing to remember and to be reminded that in the end, it's God's presence that will rule and embrace the earth. It's not Caesar. It's not any of the other sort of kings of the earth. It's God that dwells and reigns. Okay, quick Bible quiz. The 12 apostles. So, Judas Iscariot, dead. You all know who the 12th apostle is. It's not Rufus from Dogma. You all ever see that movie? Anybody remember his name? Matthias, that's right. The one chosen by a lot. And yeah. That's who it is. But whenever I see like 12 apostles, well, who's the 12?
Who's 12 of the apostles?
Right. Who's number 12 essentially? Okay. Let's look at question number 11 on page 118. If y'all have it. This great new reality, the place of God's dwelling on earth, can never be something that humans make. That takes us back to Babylon and to Babel, but remains always and forever the gift of God's love and grace. How might we live in a way that is open to receiving great gifts from God, rather than always trying to build everything ourselves? It's a tough question. Yeah.
Well, one thing you would have to do is set aside your expectations. Because if it's something that you can do, if it's something that you can't do, that cannot be created by man, then it's going to be something that you wouldn't expect.
Mm-hmm.
That brings up the question, what happens to creativity in this new order of being?
So what happens to creativity? Wouldn't you actually say that finally then humans are able to reach their fullest human potential in being creative because we're freed from the self-centeredness of sin? We're freed from the sort of, I don't know, what abstracts us now.
Everything is given to us. We don't have to do anything.
Well, it's not that everything's given to us. It's that grace is given to us, which is probably the hardest gift of all.
I'm just finding this whole last 3 chapters completely incomprehensible.
They get pretty wonky. Yeah, I know, they get wonky. But, I mean, it brings us up, though, to the question about grace. How do we receive grace in our own lives? And I think and that's the parallel, is, here's this great, beautiful gift that is given to us by God that's the sort of, whatever his vision is, this sort of signpost of the future, this sort of great cube, this great sort of holy city. But what about the grace that comes to us from God? Are we good at receiving that? Are we bad? Do we try to, build things?
Still have the free will to refuse.
Yeah, and then if we do take it, I mean, I think my issue when I receive grace is then I want to pay the person back for it, and to sort of like commodify it. Like it's really hard for me to just receive a gift because I feel like, great, now I have to return the gift, or I have to sort of, I don't know, I have to sort of ante up. Y'all ever feel that way?
So, there's this fine line between being open to grace and being just totally passive.
Yep.
We have to accept.
Yeah. Yeah. Accepting the grace. But at the same point, we also know that grace sort of should cost us everything. This is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer talked about, costly grace. That if we actually do receive God's grace, then our whole life is transformed by it. Not that we can give anything back to God, but that our lives are just totally twisted around and made new.
And we're still continually asked for more.
Yeah. So that's a good question. Is grace something that we can accumulate? And I think the answer is no. Like, there's no such thing as like a grace bank that you sort of can build up.
There's no more or less grace.
Grace is great.
Yeah.
How do you? Then you have to have an exact definition for it.
Grace?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does grace have limits?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not something you accumulate,
Right.
but you have it.
Or is it something that that we take in and immediately have to give back out? That it's sort of like like manna, the Israelites wandering around the wilderness. That you are not ever allowed to keep manna because it goes rotten. I think the same thing with grace. That we are given enough that we can't ever keep more than we need. It always has to be shared. It has to be used. It has to sort of be expended.
What's the difference between that and love?
What do y'all think?
I think grace contains a component of forgiveness.
Mm. Yeah. Whereas I see love as self-sacrifice. Sorry, these are pretty abstract stuff. What?
But you have to give it away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think so.
Grace is something we accept.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's given to us.
Yeah.
So we can't accumulate.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way I read it.
What's your mind around that?
No, because it doesn't fit in the box. You can't,
God's economy never fits in our
Mm-hmm.
boxes.
Right.
Well, the fact that when you give, you would think you would have less, but in God's economy, when you give, you end up having more of something different and made something.
Right. Yeah, I mean, God's economy, what a great sort of seminary phrase. In our economy is clearly, I give you something and I expect something in return. We do this every day buying stuff. And it's God says, no, that's not how it works. It's just, I give it to you, and then we sort of give it not back but away, so we can sort of understand what it is that God would then give us more grace, just to give more away. Kind of reminds me of the parable of the talents, right? Sort of, hey, you were given these talents, and you made more talents, and that's just how it works. Okay, then let's go question 12 here. The picture we are gazing at in these chapters is certainly a vision of the ultimate future, yet as we have seen from the letters at the start of the book, there are signs that this reality keeps peeping through even in the present world of death and tears, of cowards and liars. How do you see the glory of this future reality peeping through in our world today? Where do you see the sort of this great vision of God's grace, God's gift, peeping through today? Right, have you seen this? Okay, I mean, I'll brag on Mike. Holy Comforter collected 2,000 pounds of peanut butter and jelly for hungry people in the city of Spring. I mean, okay, if that is not the sort of picture of God's grace breaking into the future, I don't know what is. I mean, that's totally it. That's that future reality in which God has come to dwell with us completely. That's, I think, a little glimpse of that.
I was thinking Monday's afternoon meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Such a stormy meeting a week before, and then to have so much camaraderie.
Yeah.
Friendly explanation.
Yeah. So we do a meetup with a few people from Holy Comforter, and it's really become a group of atheists that meet at Starbucks on Mondays at 2. No, okay, so there are like 4 Episcopalians, maybe a few atheists, and then some other Christians who sort of aren't quite sure where they are. So it's a fascinating group. And our first meetup 2 Mondays ago was sort of contentious and stormy. But this last week, we all sort of built.
All the same people with a few additions.
Yeah.
But they were exactly the same group. And much more confusing.
Yeah, we were able to sort of build.
And I was wondering if God didn't have something to do with it.
No, I really do think God had something to do with it, big time. But it was like this really beautiful moment where and again, we would say that was the Holy Spirit. They would sort of rationalize it out. But it was really beautiful that we were able to sort of agree on many things. And I would say that's definitely God's future breaking into the present reality. It was really wild. I'm going to invite one of them to church. That's my goal, is the sort of, because he's got so many questions. I'm like, well, you got to just come check it out, like sort of, see what we do. Yeah, I know. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Where else have you all seen God's future? I think we see it in our marriages. As I look around this table, I sort of know that, all of us are married. I think that's a sign of God's future. God sort of, because when you think about it, the true sense here of this, the New Jerusalem as the bride, or the church as the bride, and the New Jerusalem as the sort of the husband. It's really about fidelity and the love for one another and the sort of unity. And I think then our sort of marriages, our relationships are signs of that as well. That when we are at one with the one we love, that is a sign of God's sort of future, when God will be completely at one with his people. Do we need like some coffee or something? I know it's been a long day.
This is such a weird subject.
It is, yeah. But remember, we've talked about this the whole time for Revelation. Is that here's the text. We can read it down into a hardened kernel and try to get the truth from it, or we can start reading it out like this. And remember, it's a dream, it's a vision. And when we have dreams, at least when I have dreams, I don't try to sort of say, oh, what was the meaning of that dream? I sort of use my imagination to think, what were the many meanings? What was sort of going on in my mind? And I think, so when we read something like this is where we have to read it sort of going out. Okay, so one last chance, and then we'll finish early, because then we'll do the remainder of 21. Actually, goes much better with all of 22, so we won't get through that tonight. One last chance. Anybody wants to say if they see God's sort of future breaking into the present?
I just can't nail down one specific time. I catch it in moments.
Yeah.
But they're just quick little moments.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing his work.
Yeah. Well, then that's kind of where we are. So we can sort of conclude there. Okay, final Bible quiz. Anybody know how long a cubit is? Yeah, great. It's from roughly your elbow to the tip of your finger, so you can kind of see somebody going, "Oh, there's a cubit." So good. Just make sure everybody knew that. Thank you for joining us out there on the interwebs. You can always send me a question, jimmy@holycomforterspring.org. I would love to hear from you. We are thinking about what we want to do next semester in the fall. And what we're thinking about doing is, rather than marching our way through a book of the Bible, is figuring out how many weeks we have, 15 or 16 weeks or whatever it is, and then coming up with 15 or 16 like theological topics. So what what is creation, what is redemption, what is grace, what do we mean by love, and then using scriptural texts, some other theological writings, then to sort of give us the tools to have some of those discussions. So not so much marching our way through the Bible, but using the Bible then as a sort of as a resource for understanding some of these big, hairy topics. Because like tonight, we tried to sort of explain what is grace, what is love. I think it'd be really good if we took a whole semester and tried to define some of these things.
Mr. Nelson would love it.
I know he would. One of our friends from Starbucks would love for us to define everything there is to, whatever. Yeah. So I would love for you to join us, and thank you for joining us out there tonight.